Hey guys, it's Hunter. Welcome back to another episode of Ask Fish. This is the generally weekly series where I answer your questions on Discord, so don't forget to join if you've got a question for a future episode. I'll leave a link in the description. You guys had some great questions this time. There is a lot to talk about, so smack a like on the video if you're going to enjoy it. That massively helps appease the YouTube algorithm and the rest of our future NVIDIA-powered AI overlords. Let's jump into your questions. Big Gumbo asks, what's your opinion on the new Guild Polara Deluxe? Okay, so not just the Deluxe, but Guild have actually done an entire revamped Polara line. And when I first heard about this, to be totally honest, Guild is one of those brands I keep forgetting exists and would only remember every time I saw the wacky as hell T-Birds at NAMM. And then afterwards, apparently I'd immediately forget because every time it was like, oh god, why? And I wasn't really familiar with the Polara shape or its history, so when these new ones dropped, I didn't really understand why some people were making such a big deal about it. No doubt, the guitars looked interesting enough, SG-style guitars with a healthy infusion of Art Deco vibes at value-level price points. Love that angled tailpiece, so my immediate thought was, alright, yeah, the new Reverend SGs look like they could probably chug hard enough through an Angle Savage. But the more I looked into the new Polara line and into Guild's history, turns out there's actually quite a bit going on here, so let's talk about it and put these into context. By my count, this is now the 4th generation of Polara. Guild's been around for a long time. They were founded in 1953, and the first generation of Guild Polara launched in 1963, and it looked absolutely nothing like the modern ones, by which I mean much uglier. No, but actually back then it was part of Guild's first foray into solid body electrics. Guild's guitar catalog from 1963 shows they had just the one solid body shape, and the S100 Polara was the middle trim level between the single pickup S50 Jetstar and the flashier S200 Thunderbird. Very quickly, Guild changed things up. The first iteration of the S200 lasted less than a year before moving to a more eye-catching offset shape. The S50 and the S100 were redesigned sometime in the early 70s to something much more SG-inspired. Jetstar is now the name Guild uses for the original 60 solid body shape, and though the Polara has been discontinued, reissued, been in and out of the lineup through Guild's very turbulent history, which we'll talk more about in a bit, it still retained that 70s design. And that brings us back to this newly relaunched Polara line, and there are a few different tiers. The 549 base model comes in blue steel, voltage yellow, and in phantom green. These are fairly minimalistic workhorses. Mahogany body, modern U-shaped mahogany neck, 2 proprietary humbuckers, 3-way pickup selector, 1 volume, 1 tone, string through. Very much a what you see is what you get type of guitar. Although on that note, you have to appreciate some of the effort they put into some of the visual details. The metal tip on the pickup selector, for example, such a super small change that looks much less cheap than plastic. The visual design of the reflector knobs, they're different, they're cool, and the blacked out pole pieces for the pickups make them look much nicer than your standard generic uncovered humbuckers. My guess is that they're going after younger players with this base model, so all the little visual details, they don't really raise the price at all, and they come together to give this a modern workhorse vibe. And you know, you've got Epiphone dropping guitars over $1,000 with Indian Laurel fingerboards. PRS managed to drop a $499 guitar with a nice proper rosewood fingerboard, a bolt-on, so that helps with the price. And in this current guitar market, I was really impressed they'd managed to do that. This Guild Polara, a real rosewood fingerboard on a set neck guitar for $549? That's very impressive. Pretty much every other import brand with major distribution has gone to Indian Laurel or Rosacer at that price point. Moving on in the Polara line, at that same tier level and price, there's the Tungsten Night Edition Polara. Same general specs, but single humbucker with a single volume, an ebony fingerboard, and completely blacked out. Not just the pole pieces, but also the hardware. There are no inlays, and in a ballsy move I'm sure the marketing team is super pleased about, even the logo has been blacked out, just like Ibanez does with their Iron Label series. Guild going full chugtastic is not something I would have ever imagined, but here we are. And with the slightly offset horns, it doesn't not work. Personally, this would be much more tempting as a mod platform if it were satin rather than the gloss. But again, for value, set neck with an ebony fingerboard for $549 in this current guitar market, that's generally something you'd only see from brands that do self-distribution. Not bad, Guild, but what is bad is that 549,549% of viewers are not subscribed. So here's a quick reminder to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notifications, stay up to date with everything guitar, and it really helps out the channel. We're trying to hit an insane 200,000 subscribers, so thank you so much to all of you who have done that. The next tier up is the $699 Polara Deluxe. It comes in Cherry Red, Vintage Sunburst, and in Canyon Dusk Metallic. Visually, these are obviously much more ornate. Fancier headstock with Guild's Peak and Chesterfield inlays. Didn't know that's what they were called. I learned so much Guild history looking into these. Binding on the rosewood fingerboard, block inlays that only go up to the 17th fret for some reason. This must be a vintage guitar thing from somewhere. Jared James Nichols' Old Glory was like that too. And I never figured that out, but it was super annoying because the side dots stopped at 17 as well. Not that it really matters because all the best riffs are played on 0 and 1 anyways, but if anyone knows where the frets stopping at 17 comes from, please let me know in the comments. It's just bizarre and I want answers. The Deluxe is loaded with the same pickups as the base model, but they've now got Fillertron type covers, which adds to the Deluxe more vintage Guild look. My favorite changes though are to the hardware. At this tier, you've now got Guild's 70s style angled tailpiece and vintage open gear tuners. I'm just a total sucker for modernized retro. Those just look super cool on a guitar made in 2024. They've also added push-pull pots to individually split the pickups, so hidden modern features that give you extra versatility while the guitars still look like classic Guilds. Dope. Then, and probably the most exciting for Polara fans and for grunge fans, Kim Thayil of Soundgarden finally has a signature Guild Polara. And I say finally because Kim is probably the most well-known Polara player. Especially if you're into guitar at the height of grunge, he's almost synonymous with that model, kind of like James Hetfield is with the ESP MX220. Kim got his first S100 in 1978. It was the guitar he had when he and Chris Cornell formed Soundgarden in 1984, and he continued to use it on records throughout his career in Soundgarden. Even when Soundgarden took off and Gibson came knocking, Chris Cornell took the Gibson endorsement, but Thayil, the lead guitarist, stuck with his Guilds, saying he just preferred how they played, even though Guild, for some reason, didn't do endorsements at the time. Kim ended up picking up more S100s, he even started playing the S300 too, a weird Rickenbacker-ish shape Guild only made from 1978 to 1981. The timing was super unfortunate though, to the point where the entire situation is almost comical. 1978, the year Kim started playing Polaras, was the exact same year that Guild discontinued them. So when Soundgarden first started blowing up in the 90s, and this was before the internet was really a thing, people generally didn't know what guitars Kim was playing. And even if you found out, you couldn't get one. And when the Polara started showing up on magazine covers, all of a sudden there was all this demand for a guitar Guild hadn't made in over a decade, and somewhere in that time they just lost the original blueprints. Specifically, after a 1992 issue of Guitar World with Kim on the front with his Guild, they got so many calls and they just couldn't make them. They actually ended up having to borrow Kim's personal S100 to copy as the basis for a reissue in, from what I can tell, 1994, and Guild did him dirty, man. That should have been a signature and endorsement deal. I mean, the reissues were literally replicas of his actual guitar, but allegedly all Kim got in return was a couple of the reissues to play on tour. Awesome, so he could do even more free marketing for them. Maybe Guilds were really just that broke, because it was only about a year later when they were bought by Fender, and just a couple of years after that, in 1997, Soundgarden broke up. So even though Guild themselves credited Thayil at the time with single-handedly resurrecting the S100 and putting their solid body guitars back on the map, there was never actually an official collaboration. But now, 46 years after he picked up his first Polara, over 4.5 decades of repping Guild guitars, Kim Thayil finally has his much-deserved signature model. Can you tell I'm a total history nerd? I love stories like these. So Kim Thayil's Polara comes in black and in vintage white, and are import versions of the 70s Guilds Kim fell in love with a couple of artist modifications. They're loaded with Guild's HB1 humbuckers, which have been sonically modeled after the pickups Guild used in the 70s, and the signature even has Guild's oversized 70s headstock. Dude, what was with this trend in the 70s and giant headstocks? Not just Guild, Fender had their oversized Strat headstock, 70s Les Paul custom headstocks are fucking massive. I mean, they're cool, I like them. Just such a random design trend though. Then it's got Grover tuners, and there's an additional toggle to switch the pickups in or out of phase. Subtle graphics paying tribute to King Animal on the truss rod cover, and to Bad Motorfinger on the rear control cavity cover. Then USA Guild electric guitars are back, and the first of this new era is a super premium level USA Artist Edition of Kim Thayil's S100 Polara. Guild is really making up for lost time. Improved specs like old growth Hunter and Mahogany for the neck and the body, custom wound HB1 pickups by Jason Lawler, the fingerboard has mother of pearl inlays and Jescar frets, nitro finish instead of poly. So overall, even more accurate to the proper vintage spec 70s Guild Polaras. Super limited run of only 30, and they'll cost $7 grand each, which is very bold. Even if these are super premium tier custom shop models, you can still grab a 90s US built Polara reissue on Reverb for significantly less. In fairness, the 90s one is a production level guitar, and this one is a custom shop level guitar, so it's not a direct comparison. I'm just saying, each of the new ones will be signed, so this is really for the Soundgarden superfans who've been waiting decades for this collaboration to happen. But the return of American-built Guild Electrics is massive for the brand, because again, they haven't made electrics in the United States since 2004, and having that super premium custom shop level made on home soil is really important for the prestige of any brand. It's very significant. That's one of the first steps they've taken in this new Guild era. And it's kind of crazy from an outside perspective because Guild has been around for 7 decades. And over that time, a lot of famous artists have played Guilds. Everyone from Stevie Ray Vaughan to Billy Joe Armstrong to Slash, a wide variety. And with that kind of longevity and legacy, they should be much more prestigious and popular than they are. So what the hell happened? In a nutshell, Guild's had a tough history. They've had a number of ownership changes. Fender didn't buy them from the original founder. They bought them from the Avnet Corporation. Apparently they're a distributor of electronic components. Cool. And under Fender ownership, Guild's production changed location a couple of times. Fender remained pretty hands-off though, both in terms of production, they let Guild's management do their thing and they continued to make high-quality instruments, but also hands-off in terms of marketing, because it was also about this time that Guild started to take the flight path of a fart in the wind and just kind of fade away. Guild also just completely stopped making electrics in 2004. And they weren't brought back until Cordoba Music Group bought Guild in 2014 and reintroduced them as part of an import line. Even then, you really don't see Guilds in the wild. Last year though, Cordoba Music Group was bought by Yamaha. And Yamaha, who started producing guitars in the 1960s, has just grown into this behemoth of a corporation with a lot of resources. They have more money than God, that's what I'm saying. In 2014, they bought Line 6, 2018, they bought Ampeg, 2022, they revamped their Revstar line, import and made in Japan models, modern specs, fresh finishes inspired by their motorcycle division, because yes, Yamaha makes f***ing everything. Legitimately, from my childhood, I remember them mostly as a boat engine company, but they also made my brother's recorder. Sure, that makes sense. We move. And this year, Yamaha did a full revitalization of their Pacifica line, including, again, modern specs, import and made in Japan options. So you can see what they're trying to do with Guilds. This American guitar manufacturer that's got this rich history intertwined with all manner of great players over a 7-decade history, but have been down on their luck for years. With that kind of legacy, with that kind of underdog story, they're a prime candidate for a modern revival. So they've already started culling the lineup. For example, the Jetstar and the T-Bird are gone, possibly to streamline it, but I would guess to pave the way for comprehensive revamped lines like they've done with the Polara. So multiple spec tiers at multiple price points, a lot more finishes, limited custom shop USA versions. Even from what they were doing with their own guitars, you know, introducing these fresh lineups with premium options, you can tell Yamaha's taken electric guitar seriously. They're making big moves in electric guitar, and especially the return of US-built Guild Electrics is a promising sign that Yamaha considers Guild a serious part of their strategy. That being said, while Guild have struggled for years, brands like Reverend have solidified themselves by filling the void for that style of guitar. It is not going to be easy for Guild to reclaim the relevance they once had. The new Polara line is definitely a good start though, and it'll be interesting to follow what happens from here. But that is more than enough for me. I hope you enjoyed this ADHD-fueled info dump. Even if you didn't find the story of how all these different moving pieces came together as interesting as I did, what are your thoughts on the new Polara line? You love them, you hate them, they make you optimistic about the future of Guild? What models do you think this new era of Guild should add next? Any and all thoughts, drop them down below. Actually, that ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, and I don't want to kill Jordan, so it's time to hear from yet another adoring fan. It's the high praise of the week. Aren't you sick of doing this crap yet? Painted Wood Circle Jerk Club? Never. Painted Wood Circle Jerk Club proud lifetime member. And with new gear dropping thick and fast, let's quickly run through a couple of the more interesting recent gear highlights. Keep these on your radar. EVH's semi-hollow finally dropped. The SA-126 is the first EVH guitar of the Wolfgang Van Halen-led era. It's obviously quite different from anything EVH has done before. Comes in stealth black, matte army drab, tobacco burst quilt, and transparent purple quilt. It's Wolfgang Van Halen's first signature model, and it's also a tribute to his dad, with not F-holes, but E-holes for Eddie, and 126, a reference to Eddie Van Halen's birthday. They'd officially announced the SA-126 a few months ago after Wolfgang had been road testing it for a while, and you can finally get one. It's an interesting blend of modern traditional carved top semi-hollow, but with a thinner body closer to a regular solid body electric, and then it's got a compound radius ebony fingerboard, spoke wheel truss rod adjustment, graphite reinforced neck, specs that are pretty standard across the shred-focused EVH line, but I can't think of any other semi-hollow with that modern spec combo. That purple one especially looks so sick. Then Schecter dropped new Avenged Sevenfold models. It's been a while since the perfect Schecter poster bros have gotten new signatures. There's a new Sinister Gates Custom S in distressed satin black, same specs as the pinstripe version of the Custom S, so you've got the flat top Avenger body, 16-inch radius ebony fingerboard, gold perloid bat and sin inlays, Grover tuners, Sinister Gates signature Schecter USA pickup in the bridge, and then, of course, Floyd and Sustaidiac combo, which I swear is some of the most fun you could have on guitar. You can just do those crazy Kerry King Floyd rebends in literal infinite perpetuity, or at least until the Sustaidiac battery runs out. Now, I'll be honest, I generally love aged and distressed finishes. This is really ugly though. Specifically, I love how played in, well done Relics guitars feel, and even if they're not going for the realistic wear look, distressed guitars are cool when each one comes out a little different, each guitar has its own wear pattern, it's unique, it's like a fingerprint. That is your guitar. There's just something off about this one. They've obviously not gone for the realistic wear, and that's fine, but it's just bizarre looking. There's no gradient to the paint, like if it had been sanded off. It's splotchy, and when you find pictures of any of these guitars in real life, that distressed paint pattern is exactly the same. So I don't know if it's a stencil or a graphic or what. Then you can see from the up close pictures at the top, the whole thing is then sealed with a satin finish. So the top looks absolutely fucked, but at the same time, the wood looks brand new. It's especially weird on the headstock. I don't know, personally, just not a fan, but this is the first Sinister Gate signature to come with stainless steel frets, so love that. And then Zachy Vengeance has a new ZV Hollywood, where all the O's have been replaced with 6s. Oh my god, and I'd say this in a legitimately positive way, I love how perfect Schecter and Avenged Sevenfold are together. Zachy's got an affinity for the more traditional style double cut shapes. His previous signatures have been aggressive versions of like a Melody Maker or double cut Les Paul. This new one though is very SG inspired. Actually with the offset horns, very similar to the Guild Polaras we were talking about before. 14-inch radius ebony fingerboard with stainless steel frets and lumen lace side dots, grip tip control knobs, Tone Pros hardware, Grover tuners, and Schecter USA Pasadena Plus and Pasadena Classic pickups. Vibe-wise, you gotta love this guitar, man. It's a sleeper chug monster masquerading as a classic 50s SG with that big pickguard, all the gold appointments, even the pickguard screws are gold, classy and chuggy. I'm all about it. And since Zachy Vengeance is a lefty, it's launched in both right and left-handed versions. Traditionally, Schecter's actually pretty good at launching both left and right-handed versions. Not so much lately because production's been absolutely so you love to see it happen with the Zachy Vengeance models. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Ask a Fish. Don't forget to join our Discord server if you've got a question for a future episode. Huge thanks to all my amazing supporters on Patreon who make each and every video possible. Their names are up on the screen right now. You can become a patron as well to add your name and get bonus extras. You can also join as a channel member or pick up some comfy ass merch. Every bit helps grow the channel. Social media, Discord server, and links to all the gear we talked about are in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I will see you for the next video.